What I'm about to tell you breaks every known law of physics and child psychology. But first, if you believe children's lives matter, if you think the truth deserves to be heard, then prove it.
Subscribe now.
Because every subscriber is a voice demanding justice for Jack and Lilly Sullivan. Two children, 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan, vanished from their home in rural Nova Scotia on May 2nd, 2025, in a way that experts call never seen before and statistically impossible. In 20 minutes, these children allegedly accomplished the impossible. They silently dressed themselves, quietly opened a door that can't be heard when it opens, climbed over a fence, and dissolved into the wilderness as completely as if the earth itself had swallowed them whole. But here's what will haunt you. The deeper you dig into this case, the more you realize that nothing, absolutely nothing, about this story makes sense. And by the end of this investigation, you'll understand why homicide detectives arrived just 24 hours after these children supposedly went out to play. If you're ready to dive into one of the most disturbing missing children cases in modern history, hit that subscribe button now because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about the impossible. The morning of May 2nd, 2025, began like any other Friday in the isolated white trailer on Gearlock Road. Landone Station, Nova Scotia. Population 100, mostly related families who'd lived here for generations. No cell phone service. Dirt roads. Thick, endless woods. The kind of place where secrets grow as deep as the roots of old trees. Inside the worn trailer, Melia Brooks Murray and her common-law partner Daniel Martel were in their bedroom with 16-month-old Meadow. According to their story, 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack were playing in the next room. Normal. Innocent. Just another morning. But what happened next would shatter the laws of reality itself. According to Melia, she was dozing, falling asleep and waking up when she heard the children playing. Daniel later claimed he saw Lilly come to the bedroom doorway several times, asking the children to be quieter so baby Meadow could sleep. He even described what Lilly was wearing, a pink shirt. Here's where the story begins to fracture. How can you be dozing in and out of sleep while simultaneously asking children to be quiet? How can you see a child multiple times and describe her clothing, but then claim in another interview that you did not see Jack that morning, while somehow knowing he was wearing blue boots with dinosaurs? Then, if you're someone who believes children deserve justice, who thinks the truth matters more than protecting lies, then you need to subscribe right now. Because if you won't stand up for missing children by hitting that subscribe button, then honestly, what will you stand up for? And if you're not going to subscribe, at least have the courage to tell us why in the comments. Around 8:20 a.m., complete silence fell over the house. As soon as I noticed I couldn't hear anything, Melia would later say, I immediately jumped out of bed. Daniel added, in 20 minutes, everything changed. 20 minutes.
Let that sink in.
In just 20 minutes, two small children, a 4-year-old in pull-up diapers and a 6-year-old who'd been coughing, allegedly accomplished a series of actions that defies every known law of physics and child psychology. They silently put on their outdoor clothes without waking parents in the next room. 4-year-old Jack somehow managed to put on his blue boots with dinosaurs without making a sound. Any parent knows that small children cannot put on shoes quietly. It's physically impossible. 6-year-old Lilly found and took her white backpack with red strawberries. She put on her pink boots, again, in complete silence. But here's the detail that should freeze your blood. They opened what the family calls the silent door. We can't hear when it opens, Melia explained in an interview. The door is practically silent when you try to open it.
Think about this.
A family with small children has a back door that's impossible to hear when opened. Not only is this incredibly dangerous for child safety, but it's also remarkably convenient for certain purposes. Even stranger, these children usually left this door wide open. Daniel constantly had to remind them to close it. But on the morning they disappeared, they allegedly carefully closed the door behind them, behavior completely opposite to their usual habits. The yard was fenced. These children would have had to climb over barriers that were physically impossible for kids their age to navigate without help. A 4-year-old and a 6-year-old don't just hop fences like Olympic athletes. And then they vanished. Not just missing, vanished. As if they had never existed at all. The parents' reactions were as contradictory as everything else in this impossible timeline. Daniel claims he immediately searched the house and backyard, then jumped in his car to drive around nearby dirt roads and drainage ditches. Meanwhile, Melia stayed home and called 911. But here's where the timeline becomes even more disturbing. Officially, the 911 call was made around 10 a.m. However, one police dispatch report mentioned the children disappeared around 8 a.m., not 9:40 as Daniel reported. That's an hour difference that was never explained. An hour that creates a chilling black hole in the timeline. What was happening during these lost hours? Why did the parents wait so long before calling for help? And most importantly, what really happened in those 20 impossible minutes? The search was about to begin, but what investigators would discover would be far more terrifying than two missing children. They would uncover a web of contradictions so complex that it would challenge the very nature of reality itself. And the deeper they dug, the more they realized that this case wasn't about children who wandered into the woods. This was about something much, much darker. Before we dive deeper into the morning that changed everything, we need to understand the family at the center of this nightmare. Because what you're about to learn will make you question everything you thought you knew about this case. Melia Brooks Murray was a young Mi'kmaq woman from Sipekne'katik First Nation, the largest Mi'kmaq community in Nova Scotia. She was raising 3 children in a world split between 2 realities, her traditional Indigenous community and the isolated white rural area where she'd chosen to live. But here's what makes this story even more unsettling. Lilly and Jack's biological father exists as a ghost in this investigation. He's so invisible that his name doesn't appear anywhere in official reports. In a case that received worldwide attention, the children's real father was erased from reality as if he never existed. Some reports suggested he was under house arrest, but even that couldn't be confirmed. In hundreds of hours of investigation, thousands of media reports, and endless speculation online, this man remained completely absent from the narrative.
Why?
What was so dangerous about acknowledging his existence? 3 years ago, Melia met Daniel Robert Martel. He was a tall, skinny 33-year-old man with sharp eyes who worked at a lumber mill. But there was something about Daniel that nobody could explain, something that would become the first major red flag in a case full of impossibilities. Daniel only worked 1 day a week. 1 day out of 7.
Think about that.
How does a man working 1 day per week support a family of 5 people? How does he afford rent, food, utilities, and everything else needed to sustain a household with 3 small children? This question was never answered. Not by police, not by family, not by anyone. It became the first warning sign in a case that would be filled with things that simply didn't make sense. If you're feeling angry right now, if you're frustrated by the injustice of it all, then channel that energy into action. Subscribe to this channel right now. Because if you won't even click a button to support the search for truth in cases like this, then what does that say about your commitment to justice? And if you're not going to subscribe, then at least tell us why in the comments. What's stopping you from standing up for Jack and Lilly Sullivan? Daniel lived in his childhood home on Gearlock Road, a property he shared with his mother's beat-up trailer filled with cats and a dog. The atmosphere was rundown, isolated, and would soon become the terrifying backdrop for what happened next. In May 2023, Melia made a decision that would change everything. She moved in with Daniel, bringing Lilly, Jack, and her newborn daughter Meadow with her. For a Mi'kmaq woman to leave her traditional community and move to an isolated white area where she'd be the only Indigenous person for miles around was a monumental decision. Indigenous communities are tight-knit, supportive, and culturally essential for raising children. Why would a young mother of 3 cut herself off from her family, her community, and her support system? The answer lies in events that nobody talks about publicly. Events that may have made staying in her community impossible. The children started attending Salt Springs Elementary School, a small country school with just 86 students. Their bus driver, Brian Ward, remembered them clearly. Too clearly. Lilly sat on the right side of the bus, in the front seat, making loud screams when she got excited. "Lilly, you can't do that," Ward would tell her repeatedly. He described her as kind of a drama queen. Jack was chatty, throwing his boots at the driver when he couldn't get attention. But here's what should terrify you. This behavior completely contradicted what the parents said about these children. The parents claimed both kids had undiagnosed autism and severe communication problems. They described children who were withdrawn, nonverbal, and struggled with social interaction. But listen to what people who actually interacted with these children said. The mother: "They're very talkative, they talk to everyone, they'll talk you to death." The aunt on the biological father's side: "The children don't talk at all." Teachers: "They were not shy, but didn't talk much." The bus driver described them as loud, attention-seeking, and highly interactive. How can the same children be very talkative, don't talk at all, and didn't talk much simultaneously? How can children with alleged autism and communication problems be described as drama queens who throw boots for attention? This wasn't just inconsistent. This was impossible. The family home was a study in contradictions. Outside, children's toys were scattered around a worn white trailer, mixed with car parts and the debris of poverty. Inside the small, beat-up kitchen, children's drawings hung on refrigerator doors like ghostly reminders of innocence. One drawing would later haunt investigators: Lily's artwork about her mother. "My mom makes cupcakes, plays with toys, and watches movies. I love my mom." There was also Jack's red painting of a bug, fitting for a child who loved digging for worms and turning over pieces of wood looking for insects. Just feet from the house, in the woods, more children's toys were scattered around, creating a surreal picture of childhood frozen in time. Later, after the disappearance, these toys would look like evidence of play that was interrupted mid-game. But the most disturbing aspect of this family wasn't what was visible, it was what was missing. The biological father, erased from existence. The impossible work schedule. The contradictory descriptions of the children. The isolation from community support. And then there were the final days of April 2025, which would become the most important timeline in this entire investigation. The last week of April would reveal a pattern of deception so complex that it would make experienced investigators question their own sanity. Because what happened in those final days before the disappearance would prove that this case had been planned long before anyone realized children were missing. The question wasn't what happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan on May 2nd, 2025. The question was what had been happening to them for weeks, months, or even years before that impossible morning. And the answer would be more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The last week of April 2025 holds the key to understanding what really happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan. But like everything else in this case, the timeline is filled with contradictions that make experienced investigators question their own sanity. Officially, Lilly and Jack last attended Salt Springs Elementary School on Tuesday, April 29th. Bus driver Brian Ward dropped them off at the end of their dirt driveway that day and never saw them again. But what happened next would reveal a pattern of deception so complex that it challenges the very foundation of this entire case. When the children disappeared on May 2nd, the stories about their school attendance began changing like shifting sand. First, Daniel claimed the kids only missed Thursday and Friday because Lilly was sick. Then, he changed his story completely, saying they hadn't been to school the entire week. A teacher confirmed seeing Lilly on Monday, April 28th. After that, silence. Complete, terrifying silence. Here's what should make your blood run cold. The 48 to 72 hours between the last confirmed sighting of these children at school and when they allegedly disappeared remain a complete blank in reality. Nobody except family members claimed to see the kids from April 29th until the morning of May 2nd. Police won't confirm whether anyone else had contact with the children during these critical days. Think about that. In a small community where everyone knows everyone, 2 children vanished from all public sight for days before they officially disappeared. What happened during these lost hours? Why did the children suddenly become invisible to everyone except those who lived with them in the isolated house on Gerlach Road? But the timeline inconsistencies were just the beginning. The more investigators dug into who these children really were, the more they realized that everything they'd been told was a lie. Remember the autism diagnosis that was used to explain the children's behavior? It was never official, never confirmed, never documented by any medical professional. It was simply a story told by parents to explain inconsistencies in their children's behavior. But here's what's truly disturbing. When you examine the actual evidence of who these children were, a completely different picture emerges. Brian Ward, the bus driver, spent months observing these children daily. His descriptions paint a picture of kids who were anything but nonverbal or socially withdrawn. Lilly was dramatic, attention-seeking, loud enough to disrupt the entire bus. Jack was chatty, interactive, and bold enough to throw his boots at adults when he wanted attention. These weren't children struggling with communication. These were children who were highly social, highly interactive, and completely comfortable expressing themselves to strangers. The teacher's observations were more subtle, but equally revealing. They described children who weren't shy, but didn't talk much. This suggests kids who were capable of communication but were perhaps being cautious about what they said and to whom. When you're trained to look for signs of abuse, this kind of selective communication is a massive red flag. Children who can communicate but choose not to often have very specific reasons for their silence. If you're someone who believes children deserve justice, who thinks the truth matters more than protecting lies, then you need to subscribe right now. Because if you won't stand up for missing children by hitting that subscribe button, then honestly, what will you stand up for? And if you're not going to subscribe, at least have the courage to tell us why in the comments. But it was the mother's description that should have sent investigators running. They're very talkative. They talk to everyone. They'll talk you to death. This wasn't just inconsistent with the autism claims. This was the complete opposite. A mother describing her children as compulsive talkers who would engage anyone in conversation. Now, overlay this with Daniel's behavior and statements, and a terrifying picture begins to emerge. In later interviews, Daniel would describe how easily these children could be kidnapped. They're easy to take. If they made it to the road, they would get in any car if offered food, water, or even candy. This wasn't a concerned statement of a worried stepfather. This was a detailed explanation of how to abduct these specific children. The family home itself told a story of children living in an environment that was simultaneously loving and dangerous. The kitchen walls were covered with their artwork, innocent drawings that spoke to creativity and normal childhood development. Lily's drawing about her mother was particularly heartbreaking. My mom makes cupcakes, plays with toys, and watches movies. I love my mom. But just feet from the house, in the woods, children's toys were scattered in a way that suggested play had been interrupted suddenly. Later, these toys would look less like abandoned playthings and more like evidence of something sinister. The most disturbing aspect of understanding these children was realizing how their isolation had been carefully constructed. Removed from their mother's traditional community, placed in a school where they were observed but not truly known, living in a home where their behavior was explained away by undiagnosed medical conditions. This wasn't just neglect. This was systematic isolation designed to make these children invisible to the outside world. And then there were the final days of April, when this isolation became complete. From April 29th to May 2nd, Lilly and Jack Sullivan existed only in the stories told by their family. No teachers, no bus driver, no neighbors, no friends. Just the word of the people who lived with them in that isolated trailer on Gearlock Road. When children become invisible to everyone except their potential abusers, they become vulnerable in ways that are difficult to comprehend. They become expendable. They become easy to erase. The question investigators should have been asking wasn't what happened to these children on May 2nd. The question was what had been happening to them during those lost days when they vanished from public sight while still allegedly alive. Because what happened during those 48 to 72 hours would determine everything that came after. And the answer would be more horrifying than anyone was prepared to discover. The timeline was about to become even more impossible, and the contradictions were about to become even more deadly. The 48 to 72 hours between April 29th and May 2nd, 2025, represent the most crucial period in understanding what really happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan. These lost hours would prove to be the smoking gun that investigators somehow missed, and the key to understanding why this case violates every known pattern of missing children investigations. Tuesday, April 29th, the last confirmed sighting of the children at school. Bus driver Brian Ward drops them off at the end of their dirt driveway. After this moment, the children enter a void so complete that it's as if they cease to exist while still officially alive. Wednesday, April 30th. No confirmed sightings. The children allegedly don't attend school. Daniel's story about why keeps changing. Thursday, May 1st. No confirmed sightings. The children allegedly don't attend school. Daniel's story about why keeps changing. Friday, May 2nd. The children allegedly disappear from their home between 8:20 and 9:40 a.m. But here's what should terrify you. During those critical 48 to 72 hours, when the children were supposedly alive and in the care of their family, nobody else in the community saw them. Not neighbors. Not friends. Not random encounters at stores or on the property. In a small community where everyone knows everyone, two children became completely invisible to the outside world while still supposedly alive and present in their home. This isn't just unusual. This is statistically impossible. Small children, especially ones described as very talkative and willing to talk to anyone, don't just vanish from community sight while remaining in their normal environment. They play outside. They're visible in windows. They make noise. They exist in the peripheral vision of neighbors and passers-by. But Lilly and Jack Sullivan became ghosts before they officially disappeared. The stories about their school attendance during this period reveal a pattern of deception that becomes more disturbing with each contradiction. Initially, Daniel claimed they missed Thursday and Friday because Lilly was sick. This would be a normal, believable explanation for short-term absence.
But then the story changed.
Daniel claimed they hadn't been to school the entire week. This expanded the timeline of absence and raised questions about why parents wouldn't seek medical attention for a child sick enough to miss multiple days of school. A teacher confirmed seeing Lilly on Monday, April 28th. This means the children were definitely present and accounted for earlier that week. But something happened between Monday and Tuesday that changed everything. What could cause two children to suddenly become invisible to their school, their community, and their broader social network while still allegedly being cared for by their family? The answer lies in understanding that these weren't random absences. These were carefully planned disappearances designed to create a window of time where the children could be harmed without immediate detection. Think about the strategic value of these lost hours from the perspective of someone planning something horrific. First, establish a pattern of illness to explain absence from school. This prevents teachers from immediately reporting truancy or wellness concerns. Second, isolate the children from all community contact. This prevents anyone from noticing changes in behavior, appearance, or well-being. Third, create a timeline where the children are officially present, but practically invisible. This provides opportunity for actions that would be impossible if the children were attending school or interacting with community members. Fourth, use the isolation to establish the final timeline for the disappearance. If no one else has seen the children for days, there are no witnesses to contradict whatever story the family decides to tell. The most chilling aspect of these lost hours is how they were used to establish the impossible timeline for May 2nd. If the children had been attending school regularly, their absence on Friday morning would have been immediately noticed by teachers and the bus driver. There would have been phone calls, wellness checks, and immediate community concern. If you're feeling angry right now, if you're frustrated by the injustice of it all, then channel that energy into action. Subscribe to this channel right now. Because if you won't even click a button to support the search for truth in cases like this, then what does that say about your commitment to justice? And if you're not going to subscribe, then at least tell us why in the comments. What's stopping you from standing up for Jack and Lilly Sullivan?